In this video tutorial I'm going to demonstrate how to use the paradigm Photoshop action, and so what we're going to be doing is basically transform this photo into this with just a couple of steps. So from that to that. Alright, so let's get started. Just open up a photo to work with, and there's a few preliminary things to check before running the action. Just go to the image menu, go to mode, make sure your photo's in RGB color mode and 8 bits of channel is selected. The next thing you want to check is that your background, your photo is set as the background layer. So if it's not, if you open up your photo and you don't have that lock symbol with the background text, just go to layer, new, background from layer, and it will set it as the background. And the next thing to check, if you go into your layer panel, just select this top right hand corner icon, go to panel options, just make sure that add copy to copy layers and group is selected, this bottom one. Click OK. Now the next thing you want to check is if you have your basic shapes loaded up. So if you go down to your tool panel here, into the shapes, go to the custom shape tool, head up the top here and just check that you have your basic shapes loaded. So if you go to this icon here and just make sure you select shapes, okay, because this action you can select a few of these to use. I'll show that in a sec. Also make sure that you're using a fairly good size photo. So this one here, you can see the width 1100 pixels by 1600, 300 dpi. That's a good size to use. I recommend between 1000 to 3000 pixels. Anywhere under 1000, you know, the quality of the action might reduce. So yeah, that's a good range to keep in there. Alright, so how do we use this action? So the first thing we want to do is create a new layer, and we want to call it brush. Has to be all lowercase. If anything's uppercase, the action won't work. Click OK. So with this layer selected, just hit B on the keyboard, grab yourself which will get up the brush. Select a soft brush, doesn't matter, or a hard brush. Select the color, any color, and you want to brush over your photo, basically where we want to apply the effect. Alright, so go ahead and do that. I'm just going to save a bit of time here. I've already created a Photoshop file here where I've brushed over the photo. Okay, so what we want to do now is load up our action. So we go to the window menu, go to actions, and go to this top right hand corner icon, select load actions, and select the paradigm.atn file, and it will appear here. Okay, click this arrow to reveal all the actions. And so what we've got here, this top one is called extend canvas. So one thing you want to keep in mind with this action is that all the effects will grow outside of where we've brushed. So this red area, all the effects are just going to expand out from that. So there's not much room between her elbow and the edge of the canvas here, so it's going to cut off a lot of the effects. So this is optional, but what I like to do is just click that action and it'll extend the canvas, so now we've got more room. So now the effects can grow all the way out here and down. So that's optional, and you can keep clicking on it to make more room, it's up to you. But we'll keep it at that for the moment. And the next step is to basically select what shape you want to use. So for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to select the triangle and just click play. Alright, so the action stops almost straight away and we're left with the shape that we've picked, and this is actually quite an important part because of what we do here will dictate how the effects will come out, how it'll look. So there's a lot we need to keep in mind at this point of the action. So the first thing we want to know, we need to realize is that the shape of the size of this shape will dictate how big the effects are around our brushed area. So for example, if I make this tiny like this, the effects, you know, might only grow just a little bit around the outside. If I make it this big, you know, the effects are going to be huge. They're going to, you know, we could extend the canvas even more. I kind of find that somewhere like, so if we keep in mind the area that we brushed, around this range is good, but that's up to you to experiment with. And another thing to notice is that if we rotate the shape like this, we're going to get a different design. rotate like this, we're going to get a different design. So there's really a lot you can do at this point. So let's just keep it nice and straight. And the next thing that this part of the action will do is that wherever you move your shape, it will sample the texture from our photo and use that texture as the main texture in the design. Okay, so for example, if I move the triangle down here, right, all the triangles that go out from where we brushed are going to be grey. They're going to have a little bit of black through them because we're sampling this area. If I move it up into here, it's going to use this gold texture. Okay, so for this first part of the tutorial, I'm just going to sample this gold texture, but then I'm going to show you how to create your own texture and use that. Okay, so once you've moved and scaled, rotated your shape into place, all you need to do is hit enter, and that's it. The action's going to go ahead, it's going to finish, and you can have your finished design. So let me just fast forward the video, we'll get to the result, and then I'll show you how to create your own texture, and then we'll jump to the layer panel and I'll show you all the different techniques to customize this design even further. So the action's finished and this is what we have. So if you just think back to the area that we moved the triangle over the gold texture, so it has used that texture inside all our triangles to build the design. And you remember that the angle that we left the triangle on was basically its default angle. You can see that it's used that angle there to build the design. So before jumping into all the layers and showing how to customize the design, I'm just going to open this photo again. I'm going to show you how to use your own texture for this action. Okay. So I've gone ahead and reopened our photo. I've created my brush layer and brushed over the area that I want to apply the effect to. So I want to demonstrate now how we can create our own texture. So I'm just going to go ahead and extend the canvas. Now what I want to do is place our pattern inside this Photoshop file. So let's go File, Place. I've got a pattern here that I want to use. So I'll just scale this down. Just make sure it's away from the area that we brushed. So you can, I'm just going to put mine up here. Alright, and then just make sure that you merge that with your background layer. So just like that. And that's it. So we go ahead and select our shape again and click play. This time I'm going to move my triangle up over the pattern that we've imported because I want to use this as our texture now. Okay, so with that done, we just click enter and I'll fast forward the video to get to the result and we'll go from there. So the action's finished and you can see now we have a completely different looking design because we sampled that area from the pattern and it's used that inside all the triangular shapes. Okay, so now let's go inside the layer panel and talk about all the different ways we can customize this design. So I'll just close the actions panel, and the first thing you'll notice when you go into the layer panel, there's a million different layers inside folders. If you want to quickly minimize all those folders on a PC here, if I hold down Control Alt and I click on the paradigm folder arrow, that arrow there, if I click on that and then I reopen it, it's minimize all the folders. So on a Mac, that's Command Option, I believe, will quickly minimize all the folders so it's nice and easy to work with. Alright, so let's go up to the top here. So I've left the brush layer on. If you want to run the action again, you could just shift select these layers, delete them, click play. Okay, so there's that. There's a look at the before and after. So we have the area that we sampled the pattern from and our original photo, which has transformed that into this. Okay, so at the top here we've got a few adjustment layers. So these are the ones that you want to use to fine tune the colours, contrast of your design. So this top one here, add saturation. You can just adjust this panel here. Boost the saturation. You can target individual colours. So I can target the yellows. I can move this around like that, get different colours. It's pretty cool. Add contrast. This layer you use the opacity here. So if I just drag this up to 100%, you'll see it boosts the contrast. Bring it down to 0. So by default I left it around 40. So you can play around with that. Add vibrance. This layer here, you can adjust these handles. which will boost the, well in that case, the saturation, and this top one here, the vibrance. Okay, moving down, add overall colour tint. If you double click on this one, you can use this handle to apply an overall colour to your design. So you can use this drop down menu, scroll through these. It's a good way of just sort of tying all the colours together a bit more. Alright, so I'll turn that one off. This layer here, add sharpening. This is just a real, just a preview of your design with a little bit of sharpening. So you can turn this one on and off. It's probably best to work with it off, but it's just good having a look at the finished design with a bit of sharpening, so it's nice and clear. Alright, let's go down. We'll just skip the paradigm folder for the moment. We'll go down to the bottom, and this here is our background colour. So what we can do here, this average image colour, this is the colour that I recommend that you use for the background. It basically averages out all the colours inside your design and picks an appropriate colour. But if you don't want that, turn that one off, and then you can just double click on this box and just change the colours here, just like that. Alright, now what I recommend you do, if you want to use a bright colour, so like a really bright blue, right, you'll notice that a lot of the details at the back just go white. It's because by default I've made this action work best with dark backgrounds because of all the blend modes. But if you want to use a nice bright background but want some of the colours and those details there, just select the paradigm folder, okay, and just select the blend mode normal, okay, and it will bring back all the details. So now you can sort of mess around with different background colours that way. Alright, so I'll just turn this back to how we had it. So we'll use this colour here. Actually, I kind of prefer the grey. We'll turn this back to pass through. Okay, so let's now jump inside the paradigm folder and take a look at what we have. Alright, so we've got all the different effects in different folders. Everything's layered, so you can move things around, duplicate them, rotate them, make this design as advanced as you want. Alright, so the first thing, we'll start from the top here. So at the top we have our blurred shapes. And what I like to do to familiarise yourself with what layers do what is you quickly flick the eye on and off so you can see what's inside that folder. Alright, and you also notice that every single folder has a mask. So if I don't want this excuse me, if I don't want this blurred triangle here, I'll grab my brush tool, I'll grab a black brush, and I'll select our mask, and I can just brush into this layer to remove anything I don't want. Or alternatively, you can go inside the folder and find which triangle that is and just delete it if you want. If you want to bring it back, just grab a white brush and brush back in. Alright, so you can go ahead, move these around, you can rotate them, flip them vertically. If I hold down Alt on a PC, Option on a Mac, I can click and drag to create a duplicate of that. I can move that around, I can create more copies, scale it, do what you want really. Okay, so that's that. I've created a layer here called Blurred Shapes Color. You can double click on this and you can move these handles around to color those. So I'll just pick a blue here. Just zoom in a bit. Alright, next folder. Extra effects. If I turn this one on and off, you can see what that's doing. There's a bunch of subtle effects that basically stack up and help build the design. So by default I've got this one turned off, called More Edge Detail. It's a good one to check if it works well with your photo or not. You can see there just around the edges it just adds a little bit of bit more detail, a few lines, a few blurry lines. You can turn that one on or off. I will leave this one on. Random lines, turn that one on and off. You can see around the edges here has some cool details. So again, if I want, I can hold down Alt, click and drag, duplicate that folder. I can merge that all together, Control E, set the blend mode to add, which is on. You can move that around, move that up here. Okay, so you can make that really, really detailed if you want. Okay, so there's just more effects here you can play around with. Like there's a bit of motion light coming out if you look at her elbows. Like this one here. Oops. Zoom light You can see that. Some light rings, more zoom light effects. Alright, so that's that folder. Dots, turn that one on and off. For this photo it hasn't come out that great, but for others, you know, there'll be dots everywhere. See if I can move one of these folders around, you can see them. So in the top right hand corner here you can see those dots. Again, you can duplicate the folders, create more dots. That's up to you. Photo overlay effects. Now if I turn this one on and off, what this folder does, it tries to blend in some of the details from the design around, so it creates more of a seamless design. But if you don't want them, turn them off like that. Let's go inside and take a look. So this one here, shape bleed, this is the one that will bleed in the design from around your photo. So if you look down at her elbow, so I'll turn that one back on, you can see that cutting in. Alright, so wear that one on. Glowing lines, turn that one on and off. You can see that by default will land on top of your photo. Again, if you don't want, say for example, I don't want these lines over a face, I'll grab a black brush and I'll just brush away like that. There's a dot there, don't want that. Alright, so where was that? Okay, shape lines, if I turn this one on and off, they're just some subtle details that are around the edges. Again, everything's layered, duplicate, rotate. So this folder here, your photo, this is the one that has your photo inside. You can see if I turn that off, we have our background. It's been built by the action. So let's go inside here and take a look what we can do. The top folder here is a bit of an outer glow effect. See that one working. You can add a bit of contrast, you can turn this layer on. You can see what that's done, it's just boosted contrast in a photo. You can use the opacity handle here and just drag that up and down. You can double click on these, change colour, you can mess around with changing the colour of your photo. Again, saturation, you can decrease the saturation, boost it, change colours. Now these two are quite interesting. By default, what I've done, if I just turn this one off and turn this one on below, you can see that the blacks, if you take notice of the blacks, like look at these straps here, with the top one turned off called bleed black. So anything that's black, basically it'll bleed through to the pattern below. And the way you can adjust that, if I double click on this layer and just down the bottom here, this handle here, if you grab this little handle here and drag to the right, you can see that it bleeds more with the pattern underneath. So you can turn this right down, you can turn it off altogether. But keep in mind that when you've run the action, I've got that turned on by default. So if you've got like a big portrait photo and you know the blackness in the eyes is taken over by the pattern below, you don't like it, just jump inside your photo folder and you can turn that one off and then turn this one on below, or use that handle in here to adjust that. Okay, so I'll just turn this one on. Alright, and another thing to realise with all this folder structure, what we can actually do is import more photos. So for example, if I want to import another model, I will go File, Place. I've got this guy here. Alright, so I can scale him down like that. I can put him below our photo. Oh, that didn't scale up for some reason. Try that again. Just like that. I can move him into place, and you can see you can build a really advanced design really easily. Okay, so that's that. Moving on down, we have this layer of highlight in blue called randomized color. This is a cool one to play around with. You double click on this one, you can adjust this handle again, and you can transform the colors of the pattern. So we can go, they'll look pretty good. I think we'll leave it, oh no, we'll add a bit of, maybe something like that. Adjust this down a bit. Alright, Sparkles, if I turn this one on and off, just adds a little bit of grit. You can see around, if you look at this area here, I'll turn this one on and off. See that working there? It's opacity set to 50%. You can crank this up to 100, like that. If you want more grittiness, or you can duplicate the layer. This folder below, glowing lines, more details, tube shapes. These ones here, if I move this one down from the top, this isn't the best example, this photo, but for most photos there'll be a lot of these tube shapes flying out everywhere, which you can move around. They will appear at the top and the bottom of the design, so these two folders here, the top and the bottom. Glowing lines, shape set 1. Now here's the shapes 1, 2 and 3. Okay, so if I move these around, you can see that there's our triangles, the pattern that's been built. You can see our texture that's been sampled. Now this is the default design that I've got the action to build, but you can actually go inside each one of these folders and move around shapes individually. Alright, so you can grab triangles, move them around wherever you want. Okay, that's the same with all these other folders here. And one thing I like to do, if I control click to select these 3 groups, I like to experiment with changing the blend modes. So if I turn this to lighten, you see what it's done there? It's removed all the blacks, so then we have this much more abstract looking background. Or I can set this to darken to remove the whites, you know, so you got a darker pattern here. Alright, so that's a really cool one to play around with. Okay, light blast. This one here is one you want to check the opacity of when you play the action. So by default I've set it to 80. If I turn this down to 0, you can see it's light that basically comes shooting from behind your photo. So for some photos you'll run the action and might be a bit bright. Check that layer, drag the opacity right down, because it might be because that layer there is just, the light's just too overpowering. There's too much whites in your photo. Okay, light rings, if you look around the edge here, you'll see that it's this subtle round shape will appear, so you can duplicate that layer to make it more prominent if you want. Diagonal streaks, if I turn this one on and off, you can see that they're the lines that run along the edges of all of our shapes. Alright. Okay, folder below is I've called background clouds. If you go into this one, or turn this folder on and off, you can see that it's just some subtle cloudy texture behind everything. But what you can do, you can turn this layer on to colour it. So you can pick different colours. I just thought the blue looked pretty good. Alright, so that's that. And that pretty much covers it. If you want to import your own background, what you can do is just turn off these 2 layers, so you can see everything's on a transparent background. So you can go through the process of go File, Place, to import your photo, put it in the background, and then yeah, you have a completely customized design. Alright, so when that's done, you're happy with it, don't forget to check back on adjusting these. So this is a good one to play around with, to, like I mentioned, to sort of tie the colours together a bit more. Alright, so I've finished our design. We can take a look at the before and after. So start off with that, import our pattern, play it around, and we have this. Alright, check that. Alright, so now I want to add a bit of sharpening, so I can just go layer, flatten image, discard all the hidden layers, so we just have one layer here. So now I'll just duplicate this and go sharpen, smart sharpen, and I like to use a radius around 0.3, and you can adjust this to what you like. And there we have it, a completely modern looking design in really no effort at all, and there's a lot of customization options. It's a lot of fun to use as well, and really simple. So if you've got any questions, let me know. I'm more than happy to help. If not, have fun.